Okay, here we go. All right, so I'm recording. All right, so I'm gonna, let's see, I'm gonna go back to starting this PowerPoint. And all right, so the relationship between the Corps of Cadets and the Naval ROTC. So the Naval ROTC falls under a larger naval command called NSTC, and that's the parent command for all of the 80 Naval ROTC units across the nation. And our focus is mainly on getting all of the students that come to Virginia Tech to commission. And we care about your academics, we care about your physical fitness, and then we care about the actual naval leadership aspects of your life. And we want to make sure that you're prepared to become a naval officer. The Corps of Cadets is part of Virginia Tech itself, and it's also part of the state of Virginia. And they work on your day-to-day training, so you'll wear Virginia Tech Corps of Cadets uniforms throughout the day, but at the end of the day, we're very separate, but we do work together. So the Naval ROTC, our CEO's vision statement, is that we're here to make the men and women who will sail our ships, drive our subs, fly our planes, and lead our Marines. And that's our mission. Our mission is to commission those unrestricted line officers. So our priorities. We look at academics first. So we want to make sure that you are on a pathway to get your degree, because without a degree, you won't become a naval officer. And you'll meet with your academic or your advisor, your naval advisor, and your academic advisor twice a semester. And we'll sit down to make sure that you're on an appropriate pathway to commission. Professional development wise, you'll get put into different leadership roles within each of your companies. You'll also get, on Tuesdays in the afternoon, we do a pro lab where we discuss general military training. And then we also discuss things that are going on with the Navy. We bring in speakers and everything to kind of give you a feel for what's going on in the Navy. Physical fitness, you'll get to do PT. If you're in the Navy option, you'll PT on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 a.m. If you're in the Marine option, you'll PT Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 in the morning. And then there are two physical fitness tests. One at the beginning of the semester as an inventory, PRT, and then one at the end of the semester, which is the official PRT. And that's the one that gets actually recorded as far as your physical fitness status. So a question often gets brought up is who actually commissions out of Naval ROTC? And it is a little restrictive. So we specifically look to commission unrestricted line naval officers. And what that means is that you would be in a position to command at sea or on shore as either a submarine officer, a naval aviator, a naval flight officer, a surface warfare officer, or an EOD or SEAL. The Marine Corps is a little different, as you commission into the Marine Corps and you don't actually select your pathway until after you've gone through OCS and TBS. So who don't we commission is the big question. Naval ROTC does not commission people into the JAG Corps, the Supply Corps, the Civil Engineering Corps, the intelligence community. We do not put anybody into staff positions. You don't become a doctor or a nurse or a chaplain out of here. So we are specific to the 5 specializations that are put out on this slide: subs, naval aviation, surface warfare, or special warfare. Okay. So there's a lot of numbers on this slide. What I really want to hammer home on this slide specifically is that in 2018, you can see there were 51 Navy and 13 Marine scholarships handed out. That cap was lifted last year. And in 2019, they handed out 76 Navy and 16 Marine option scholarships. That's a 43.8% increase. That means that Virginia Tech no longer has a cap to how many national scholars we can have at our institution. And it's just going to keep growing. So we actually commission more officers than any of the other ROTC programs. We are by size the second or third largest at the minute, but we commission more than anybody else. The other big takeaway on this is that we also commission more sub-officers than anybody else. You can see 2018, we were at 7 sub-officers. This last May, we were at 8 sub-officers. So we put on a lot. Same with SEAL and EOD. We actually commission more SEALs and EOD team members than anybody else as well. So, but we're growing fast and we're a very big program. So the national scholarship on here that's talked about, the national 4-year scholarship, that's the scholarship that you should apply for when you're in high school, okay? It's the most flexible, and from my understanding, it's also the easiest one to pick up of the scholarships. So you would go through, you would put your application in before January. A scholarship coordinator would reach out to you. He'd make sure that you get all of your pre-scholarship requirements taken care of, and you would be submitted to a board, and they would review you and announce if you got the scholarship, and then you would hear from me. I would be the first person that would send you an email saying, hey, congratulations, you got the scholarship. Now, if you don't pick up the national scholarship, there are still options available to you. There are sideload scholarships. So if you don't pick up the national scholarship and then you come to Virginia Tech and you're in the Naval ROTC unit without a scholarship, I'm going to encourage you, if you are under 30 credit hours at Virginia Tech, to reapply for the national scholarship because you're still eligible at that point. If you don't pick up the national scholarship the second time, at the end of your first year, I'm going to send out guidance on how to apply for sideload scholarships. And the sideload scholarships cover all of the same stuff as the national scholarship, which I'll cover in a minute. So the sideload scholarships, they have all the same requirements. They cover all the same things. They are a bit more competitive. And so in order to actually maintain your scholarship, you need to have at least a 2.5 GPA. You need to be within the height and weight standards and the physical fitness standards, and you need to be doing what you're supposed to. So there are typically 2 types of sideload scholarships that get put out. There's a 3-year sideload scholarship, and last year there were 285 people that applied for this scholarship, and only 157 got selected. So just over half. The average GPA of those students was a 3.38, which at Virginia Tech is very hard to do that first year, especially if you're an engineering program and you're taking that calculus. But if you go into calculus and physics knowing that they're going to be hard classes, 3.38 is not an unreasonable expectation. 57% of the applicants were calculus complete, and 73% were in a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 major. So what does that mean? Tier 1 majors are your 8 core engineering degrees. Tier 2 majors are the remaining engineering degrees, plus life sciences, plus your data analytics, and your computer science sorts of majors, which are all listed out on the actual Naval ROTC website if you go look. All right, so if you don't pick up the 3-year sideload scholarship, at the end of your sophomore year, I'm going to push you to start applying for a 2-year sideload scholarship. And this last year was very unusual. Of the 170 people that applied across the nation, 150 of them were actually selected, so almost 90%. We picked up 13 of those. The average GPA of all the selectees was a 3.18. 43% were physics and calc complete, and 69% were in a tier 1, tier 2 major. So now if you get all the way to the end, and for whatever reason you do not pick up a Sideload scholarship, there's one last option that's available to you, and that's called advanced standing. Now, advanced standing does not cover all of the same things that the Sideload scholarships and the national scholarship pay for. But what it does do is it still gives you an opportunity to commission into the Navy. Of the 75 people that did not pick up a Sideload scholarship and applied for advanced standing, 72% were selected, or 72 were selected, which is 96%. So more or less, if you're doing what you are supposed to and you would like to commission into the Navy, there is a pretty good chance that you can at least get it done through this. Average GPA was a 3.12. Only 8% were physics or calc complete, which for the advanced standing, the requirement for physics and calculus drops off. And to cover that, all of the scholarships require you to take 2 semesters of calculus and 2 semesters of physics with a calculus base in order to commission. 25% of the advanced standing people that were selected were in technical tier 1, tier 2 majors, meaning this is where a lot of that tier 3 major starts to come in. And to clarify, the tier 3 majors would be your business, communications, international relations, poli-sci, those sorts of degrees are tier 3 degrees. So program benefits. The scholarships, whether it's a Sideload or a national scholarship, will cover your tuition, your fees, your books, and your uniforms. What isn't covered there is your room and board. Your room and board will still have to be paid for out of pocket. For people that are not on a scholarship, if you've been in the Corps of Cadets for 60 days, the Navy will still cover your uniforms. You are committed to the Navy once you actually sign the dotted line on your scholarship. So, if for whatever reason you decide to walk away after you've hit that commitment period, you will have to pay back the tuition and the fees and the book allowances that have been given to you. I've discussed the math and physics requirement. We talked about ProLab on Tuesday afternoons. Every semester that you are in the Naval ROTC, you will be required to take a naval science course. If for some reason you do push over and you need either 4.5 or even 5 full years of school, your scholarship will cover that additional semester or that additional year of tuition. And then every summer, as long as you're on scholarship, you get to go on summer cruises. So the first year you typically go on Quartermid, which is 4 or 5 weeks, and you get to bounce around and see the different communities within the Navy. During that second year, third year, and your fourth year, you can go on more specific cruises. Like if you want to go and hang out with an aviation squadron, you're more than welcome to go and do that for a summer. If you want to take summer classes, it's a little bit of a gamble. Well, it's not a gamble, but it depending on the classes that you're taking, if it shortens the timeline of your graduation, the Navy may or may not cover it. So summer classes are kind of a case-by-case thing, and if you talk to your advisor, he can probably help you get through that. So big picture, you're going to be both in the Corps of Cadets and you're doing the Naval ROTC thing at the same time. You get the chance to go on summer cruises, and you get to interact with naval lieutenants and then our commander and our captain. Okay, here's my contact info. All right, so that's the presentation. Now, I know we've got a lot of people in here, so does anybody have any questions? Okay. I've got a couple in chat here. So this first one is from Sam Batchelor. He says, what is the PRT consisting of? So for the Navy, it is your standard Navy PRT, which is push-ups, sit-ups, and a 1.5 mile run. And everybody is required to pass it at the 20 to 24 for their gender. You're required to do the 20 to 24 age group, and you need to get a good low at a minimum in order to commission. Okay. The next question is from Trey, and he says, what do you, if you want to be a JAG, what do you do to become a JAG, a doctor, or a chaplain? If you're looking to get into a staff corps position or a restricted line position, you need to either go the OCS or ODS route. There are opportunities where you can contact like a medical recruiter if you want to become a doctor, and you can talk to them about naval scholarship opportunities, but they are a separate setup. And I think that kind of answers Jackson's question too, asking about intel. Now, his is a little different because he's asking is how can he reach an intel position later if you're already in. So if you come in unrestricted line, later on in your career, you could do a lateral transfer to the restricted line, but you'd have to work through the actual naval processes for that later on. Okay. Maya asks, can midshipmen go to grad school after graduating from VT? There actually have been a number of opportunities to go to grad school immediately following your undergrad graduation. Some of them have been offered where you could go to the Naval post-grad school. So you would commission, and then you could go to the Naval post-grad school and work on a master's degree. If you're thinking about going somewhere else, that becomes kind of iffy, and you'd have to put a request through NSTC to see if they would let you do that. I don't think it's unheard of, but it doesn't happen very often. Okay. Are internships allowed during the summer, or would they conflict with summer cruises? That's a good question. There are occasional internships that are allowed during the summer. It is more encouraged that you go on a summer cruise, though, because you're ultimately looking for a naval commission. But in order to actually commission, the only cruise that's really required is your senior year cruise, your first class cruise. So you could do an internship during the summers prior, but it's super encouraged to go on those summer cruises. Okay. Shannon asks, if you enlist while in school, does the time start then or when you graduate for your 20 years? Well, so we have very strict regulations where you cannot be an active duty member of the military or in the reserves, for that matter, while you're in the ROTC program. So you can't be concurrently enlisted. Okay. Kayla asks, do the Marine cadets train with the Navy cadets? They do. All of the Marines work side by side with the Navy cadets or midshipmen, and the only thing that isn't jointly done is PT, although we have been on Thursdays inviting the Marines to come hang out with the Navy, and we have been doing a full battalion PT one day of the month. Okay, Kyle asks, if I'm interested in the Marine Corps option and I did not receive a scholarship this year, is it possible for me to reapply and receive the scholarship? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and like I said with the Sideloads, your advisor is going to encourage you to reapply for those Sideload scholarships. So you would be a college programmer. Your tuition wouldn't be paid for while you're a college programmer, but we're going to push you to reapply for the scholarship and continue to try to get that. Okay. Brian asks, does this program accept restricted line? It does not. Typically, we are only unrestricted line. We are looking to commission unrestricted line officers. It is very, very rare that we put anybody into a restricted line position. And the only time that that actually happens is if you've been, for whatever reason, you've been cleared and you have a scholarship, and then you get all the way to the end and somehow they find some medically disqualifying thing. That is the only time I've ever seen anybody go a restricted line direction. All right, Sam asks, what does an average morning of PT and formation look like for the Navy and the Marine Corps? So we have 4 naval companies and we have 1 Marine option company. For the Navy, they meet up Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 a.m. PT is an hour long. I allowed the company PTI, the actual one of the members of the company gets to design the PT for them. They pass up an operation order, and you guys will go and do an hour-long workout together. For the Marine Corps, it's the same concept, except for you would have Gunnery Sergeant Race. He's a past drill instructor, and he runs you guys all the Marine options. Okay, Tom asks, if you join Naval ROTC, are you required to serve overseas afterward? Yes, if you commission into the Navy, you're going to end up deploying and you're going to end up serving overseas for a while. From Kyle, what is the approximate number of Naval ROTC members that are in Marine Corps option? We have about 300 total midshipmen. 60 of them are in the Marine option, and then 200 of them, just over 200, are Naval option or Navy option. Okay, Tom asks, can you be in the Corps of Cadets and be in the Naval ROTC? In fact, at Virginia Tech, in order for you to be in an ROTC program, you have to be in the Corps of Cadets. So you don't have to be in an ROTC program if you want to be in the Corps of Cadets, but in order to be in the ROTC program, you have to be in the Corps of Cadets. Okay. Maya asks, when do you have to declare your major? That's college dependent. A lot of people don't end up actually declaring their major until their 2nd year. Now, for the scholarship, you're going to list on your scholarship what you intend your major to be. And if you decide to change from that, you can always put in a major change request for your scholarship through, which is not that big of a deal. All right. Carter asks, how do cadets wanting to be special warfare prepare for the profession? You work out a lot, you get good grades, and you do exactly what you're supposed to. Thomas asks, what extra requirements are there if I have an interest in subs? Towards your junior year, the submarine options will start to prepare for their nuke interviews. And you'll sit down. We have 2 submarine officer lieutenants that are on staff, and they help to prepare you and guide you and set you up for that process. But initially, the best thing you can do is work on your school, because your #1 job while you're here is to get a degree. Okay. Tom asks, when you join the Corps of Cadets, are there more benefits if you decide to additionally join Naval ROTC? Well, the Corps of Cadets doesn't pay your tuition. So the Naval ROTC is the scholarship. We pay your tuition, and we also offer you a commission into the Navy at the end. The Corps of Cadets doesn't offer that. Okay, Daniel asks, for flight officers, what are some specific training opportunities? If you're debating going NFO or pilot, during your summer cruise time, you can request to go on an aviation cruise. There's also there's an aviation society meeting that happens weekly, where everybody that wants to go naval aviation sits down and you guys discuss studying for the ASTB or working on anything that would prepare you to go into naval aviation. Okay, Kyle asks, do the Marine Corps options follow the same chain of command? as the NROTC midshipman. Yep, it's all combined. The Marine option guys answer to the same battalion staff that's made up of midshipmen. So we have an overarching battalion staff that watches all 5 of the companies, and so each of the companies has their own setup, and then ultimately you guys all have the same staff. So there are currently 5 Navy lieutenants, there's 1 Marine captain, and then there is 1 Navy commander and 1 Navy captain. Okay, Jack asks, how many cadets try for the SEAL track? I bet you we have at the minute about a dozen. I bet you we have 12 to 15 right now. Okay. Carter asks, since Virginia Tech only offers systems engineering within the industrial engineering, does this still count as tier 1? I don't remember off the top of my head, but honestly, the difference between being tier 1 or tier 2, it's almost negligible when it comes to the scholarship application. When they do the weighting process, a tier 1 major counts as 100%, tier 2 counts as 90%. Okay. Ryan asks, is it possible to double major with ROTC? It is, but your scholarship is specifically written only towards 1 major. So if it turns out that you're having trouble or you want to take summer classes for that 2nd major, the Navy is not going to cover the tuition for that 2nd major. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? Aha. Maya says, how easy is it to switch tracks? If you wanted to be a Marine, but then you ended up wanting to go Navy, that becomes kind of tricky. So the Marine Corps actually has to release you. You'd have to put a request form in to the MCRIC, and he would have to authorize your scholarship to change over. Now, if you don't have a scholarship, switching over is really not that big of a deal, though. It's just a simple paper request and a word of mouth, and you can switch over to the Navy option. Okay. Jackson asks, are critical languages counted as tier 1 or tier 2? No, they actually do a separate thing, and it's called tier 3, and it's an LREC option. So it holds more weight than tier 3 by itself, but at the same time, it's really it's still a tier 3 kind of thing. But there is a preference towards those preferred languages. All right, Tom asks, how often do you PT? If you're talking about me specifically, I'm typically in the gym 3 days a week. Although right now I have to run around my own subdivision because the gym is closed. If you're talking about the Navy, then it's Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you're talking about the Marine option, it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay. Isaiah asks, how do you qualify for a commission into EOD? The same way you qualify for everything else. You get good grades, you have a scholarship, and there is a selection process, and you may or may not get it. It's all kind of need of the Navy and how you fall out ranking next to the next guy. All right, Shannon asked, Shannon, could you reword your question? I'm not really sure what you're trying to ask. Paulos asks, during the 4 years, when should you know what you want to be commissioned as? Service assignment does not occur until the end of your junior year. So you will find out which pathway you're going down the start of your senior year. So you have about 2.5, 3 years to figure out which way you want to go. Carter asks, since the slideshow said that only 3 SEALs commissioned last year, does this mean that the remaining 9 candidates go surface warfare and try again? Maybe they decided to go surface warfare. I don't really know. I don't remember which way they fell out. So, but they can try to go surface warfare and then try to laterally transfer. I'm pretty sure the odds of it are very slim, but you can try. Tom asks, do you have to know what your major will be when you start into Naval ROTC? No, you don't if you come in as a college programmer. If you apply for a national scholarship, you do have to put in there what your preferred major is going to be. And then Jack asked, you have to have a scholarship to commission. Like I said in the PowerPoint, you have to have either a scholarship or you have to be in advanced standing in order to commission. Okay. Lee asks, what majors will help me or give me leverage with special warfare? If you're a tier 1 major and you're on scholarship, it really comes down to your PT scores and your GPA. You know, if you're a 4.0 student that's maxing out the PRT, you should be fine. Is your choice of community, SWO, air, EOD, etc., subject to class standing? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Your preference is based on your class standing. So the way that you perform and the most heavily weighted parts of that are your PRT scores and your academics. Kyle asked, does your track have to line up with your major? For example, if you're majoring in aerospace engineering, do you have to do something with aviation? No, you don't. You can be an aerospace engineer and go surface warfare. You can be an international relations major and go aviation. It doesn't have to be correlated. Tier 3 for Shannon. Tier 3 are the majors. So if you go onto the Naval ROTC website and you search for the major tiers, it'll break out. You'll go tier 1 is this, it's these 8 majors. Tier 2, it's all of these life science and engineering majors. And then tier 3 is business and international relations and poli-sci and humanities and sorts like that. And for scholarships, they really look for tier 1 and tier 2. Okay, Megan asks, what comes first, entry into Virginia Tech or applying for the NROTC scholarship? Most people put in both applications at the same time. The scholarship application is due January before you would show up to school. So the incoming freshmen, the freshmen that are going to start in August, needed to have applied for a scholarship this past January because the scholarship application closed January 31st. So if you're a senior in high school, right now, you've missed the deadline. If you're a junior in high school right now, and you're going to be starting college in August of 2021, you need to get your application moving, and it needs to be turned in before January of next year. Okay. Shannon asks, are the tiers the same for Marines? Marines actually, strangely, they don't fully tier theirs. They do put weight into it, but they don't really tier it out as much. There's a little bit more leniency as far as the Marine options go with their majors and the scholarships, although they still do prefer kind of the tiered out majors that the Navy puts out. Okay. Tom asks, how early should you apply for the scholarship? Like I said, you just need to get your application in before January. January before you would start college. Cody goes, how is the SEAL track different from other Navy tracks? Well, we all have different pathways. Once you commission, you would go off to BUDS. You go through the SEAL training pipeline, and you would ultimately just kind of move through that normal training. Every pipeline is very different. You would study that in your Intro to Naval Science course. Any other questions? Okay. If you're accepted into VT and you selected that you wanted to join the Corps during the application process, are you automatically part of the Corps and the ROTC? Yeah. So if you're accepted in Virginia Tech and you put I want to be in the Corps of Cadets, when you show up to your new student NDOC week, which is the week before school starts, they will get you lined up on into the appropriate ROTC unit. Harold asked, how do I rank my schools for the ROTC scholarship if I don't know which schools I'm getting into? I would list my top 5, and I think one of them has to be in your hometown or within a certain proximity of your hometown. So you can just talk to your coordinator if you get into one school over another and you get the scholarship. You can just ask them, hey, will you put my preferred school to the top? That's all you have to do. Are there any specific PT scores you must have to get into an ROTC? And do you have a training week? So the Navy does not have a training week. You need to have good low on your PRT scores. So if you go look up Navy PRT scores, and you need to be getting a good low for the 20 to 24 age group. Good low means if you go and you Google Naval PRT scores, you'll get a chart that shows you they bracket it and they go, okay, a good medium is, you get these scores, a good high is this, an excellent is this, an outstanding is this, and you would need to get whatever it says for a good low on the on that PRT chart. For the Marine option guys, they have different Marine standards for PT, and you'd have to go and look up their PT requirements. And if you Google the regulations for officer development, it will break it down into, you know, these are your PRT requirements. And I believe for the Marine guys, you have to get a 200. I think it's a 200 on the CFT. So, but I would go look that one up. All right, guys. We're done about 14 minutes early, unless anybody else has another question. Otherwise, you guys can go back over to the Corps of Cadets, the previous Zoom meeting, and head back over there. Okay, Tom's got a last question. If you don't make the Navy ROTC PT requirements, can you still join the Corps? Yes, you can. You can still join. No, the PRT is typically administered the first week of school. So not before school, but usually the first week of school or the second week of school. All right, thanks everybody.